Voices-Voix brings together Canadians who are concerned by efforts of the federal government to silence those who oppose its policies. We have documented over 80 such cases. The UN is looking at what's happening to democratic rights in Canada.
I'm hearing a lot from civil society organizations complaining that they feel their space is being reduced. They feel that there's much more surveillance by the state on what they're doing. They feel that there's much more control, and that the state is asking them to be accountable to the state as opposed to the state being accountable to the citizens through civil society and other forms. But it's worrying when you hear these comments and these kinds of statements coming out so in such a uniform and in such it's very uncoordinated. Each person has got their own experiences. But the trend is pretty worrying just to hear. And I think it's important at this stage for us to start thinking and start researching, to ask ourselves why this information is not coming out of the country. I mean, it seems to be very much controlled and confined in Canada, but be able to see then how we can relate and ask questions of the state, to hear the government's view, because it has a view, whether we agree with it or not is irrelevant, but has a view, and it's important to hear that as we make a judgment and assessment of what the right thing is in terms of what's going on in Canada today. The issue of freedom of assembly and association, those two rights, are fundamental to democracy in a very real way. That any society, you judge a society and how democratic it is if there is respect for freedom of association and also for assembly. They're fundamental in the sense that if a government does not respect those rights, a government puts restrictions to the right of citizens to associate and to assemble in protest, whichever way, then you know that the democracy is a bit challenged, and there are questions to be answered about why those restrictions are there. I mean, the people of Canada have got all the power. You can and you should protest over things you care about. That, for me, is a fundamental right, I think. And if you have the space, as it seems Canadians have the space to actually protest peacefully on some of these issues, please come out. It's an important right, and don't take it for granted, because it's not common in other countries, not as common as you think. So whatever it is, please come out. It's peaceful. Have your voice heard. It's so important. But I think it's also important for people in Canada to organize. And for me, again, coming from where I do and from what I've seen across the world, I think it's so important to hold the state accountable. And that is fundamental. I mean, no government, no regime in office will ever cede space by itself. That's the history of the world from a long time ago. States and governments cede space when they are pressured to do so. And that's fundamental. That's what human rights is about. Human rights is about limiting the space of the state and allowing people and organizations to be able to move and to be able to operate so they can achieve the goals they want to achieve. And that is fundamental. I think that's something Canadians should not take for granted. In fact, they should exercise way more than they're doing so now.